They told you that you were an old soul. They praised you for your maturity. They looked at a child who was barely tall enough to reach the kitchen counter, and they marveled at how responsible you were, how quiet, how easy to manage. They called it wisdom, but they did not see the theft. They did not see that your maturity was not a gift, but a survival mechanism. A child does not naturally stop playing to manage the emotions of a room. A child does not naturally learn to silence their own needs to keep the peace. That is not nature. That is adaptation. And while the world applauded your strength, you were quietly suffocating under the weight of a childhood you never got to live. You learned early on that the people who were supposed to be your anchors were actually the storms. You realized, perhaps before you even had the words to articulate it, that the emotional climate of your home depended entirely on you. You became the emotional thermostat. You learned to read the room the moment you walked through the door. You learned to decipher the heavy footsteps of a parent, the specific tone of a sigh, the dangerous silence that lingered before an outburst. You became a master of observation, not because you wanted to be, but because your safety depended on it. If you could predict the mood, you could manage it. If you could be perfect, invisible, or helpful, maybe you could prevent the chaos from erupting. And so you began the slow and painful process of editing yourself. You carved away the parts of you that were too loud, too needy, too childish. You learned that your needs were a burden, that your tears were an inconvenience, and that your joy took up too much space. You buried your own impulses deep in the soil of your psyche, hoping they would stay there. You became the fixer, the mediator, the counselor, the best friend, the parent to your parents. You gave and gave until you felt hollowed out, scraping the bottom of a well that no one else ever bothered to refill. Now you are an adult, and you look around at your life and wonder why you feel so tired. It is an exhaustion that sleep cannot touch. It is a fatigue that lives in your bones, a heaviness that sits in your chest. You have built a life of high function. On paper, you are successful. You are reliable. You are the person everyone calls when things fall apart because they know you will hold it together. You are the strong friend. You are the independent partner. You are the capable employee. But inside, you often feel like a fraud. You feel like a frightened child wearing an adult's costume, waiting for someone to expose you, waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is the legacy of growing up too fast. It is not just a lost past, it is a haunted present. You carry the patterns of your survival into your freedom, and they become your cage. One of the most defining traits you likely carry is hyper-independence. To you, asking for help does not feel like a normal human interaction. It feels like an admission of failure. It feels dangerous. Somewhere along the line, you learned that depending on others leads to disappointment or danger. You learned that if you want something done right, or if you want to be safe, you must do it yourself. So you hoard your struggles. You refuse to let anyone see you bleed. You handle everything alone, convincing yourself that you prefer it this way, while secretly longing for someone to step in and take the weight off your shoulders, even for a moment. But when people do offer help, you reject it. You say, "I'm fine, I've got it." Not because you don't need the help, but because the vulnerability of receiving it feels unbearable. To be taken care of feels foreign, suspicious, even terrifying. This hyper-independence bleeds into your relationships. You may find yourself attracted to partners who need saving, partners who are emotionally unavailable, or partners who bring chaos into your life. This is not because you love suffering, but because chaos is familiar. It is your home frequency. You know how to function in a crisis. You know how to manage someone else's emotions. It makes you feel useful. And in your childhood, usefulness was the currency you used to buy love. If you're fixing someone, you are in control. If you are the strong one, you are safe. A relationship where there is peace, where there is equality, where a partner simply loves you without needing you to carry them, can feel boring or anxiety-inducing. You might find yourself waiting for the fight, waiting for the betrayal, because your nervous system has been wired to expect instability. Peace feels like the eye of the storm, not the destination. And then there's the guilt. The crushing, pervasive guilt that arises the moment you try to prioritize yourself. The moment you say no,
The moment you set a boundary, the moment you choose rest over productivity, a voice in your head tells you that you're being selfish. You have internalized the idea that your worth is tied to what you do for others, not who you are. You feel like you have to earn your existence every single day. Rest feels like laziness. Stillness feels like wasting time. You are constantly in motion, constantly achieving, constantly fixing, because if you stop, you're afraid of what you might feel. If you stop, the silence might get too loud. If you stop, you might have to face the immense grief of the child who is still waiting inside you. That grief is the invisible weight you drag behind you. It is the grief of a childhood that was skipped over. While other children were learning to play, you were learning to survive. While other children were being held, you were holding everyone else together. You missed out on the fundamental right to be irresponsible, to be messy, to be taken care of. And now, as an adult, you might feel a strange resentment towards people who had easier lives or children who are acting out. You might feel a flash of anger when you see someone being carefree because a part of you is screaming, "Why didn't I get to have that? Why did I have to be the strong one?"
This is where the healing begins. It begins with acknowledging that what happened to you was not okay. It begins with validating the reality of your experience. For so long, you may have minimized it. You may have told yourself that it wasn't that bad, that your parents did the best they could, that others had it worse. You might have gaslighted yourself into believing that you were just naturally mature, but maturity that is forced upon a child is not maturity, it is trauma. It is a violation of the natural order. You did not choose to be an old soul. You were forced to age because the adults around you were not adult enough. You have to allow yourself to grieve. You have to mourn the child you didn't get to be. You have to mourn the safety you didn't have. You have to mourn the years you spent worrying about things that no child should have to worry about. This grief is heavy and it is messy. It involves anger, a righteous, burning anger on behalf of your younger self. Why was no one protecting you? Why was it your job to fix everything? This anger is not dangerous, it is necessary. It is a sign that you are finally beginning to value yourself enough to realize you deserved better. As you move through this grief, you will start to encounter your inner child. This is not just a psychological concept, it is a felt reality. It is the part of you that still feels small, afraid, and lonely. For years, you may have ignored this part of you. You may have viewed your own vulnerability with contempt, pushing it down, telling yourself to toughen up. But healing requires you to become the parent to yourself that you never had. It means turning towards that scared inner child with compassion instead of judgment. It means saying, "I see you, I hear you. You don't have to handle this alone anymore. I am here now. I am the adult, and I will keep us safe." This process of reparenting is slow. It happens in the small moments. It happens when you are overwhelmed, and instead of berating yourself for being weak, you speak to yourself with kindness. It happens when you are tired and you allow yourself to rest without guilt. It happens when you set a boundary, even when your voice shakes, because you know that protecting your peace is more important than pleasing others. It happens when you ask for help, risking the vulnerability and realizing that you do not have to carry the sky on your shoulders. You begin to learn who you are outside of your utility. Who are you when you are not fixing someone? Who are you when you are not achieving? Who are you in the quiet moments? This is a terrifying question for someone who grew up too fast, because for a long time the answer felt like nothing. You felt that without your function you would disappear. But you are discovering that there is a person beneath the armor. There is a version of you that likes things just because you like them, not because they are useful. There is a version of you that can play, that can be silly, that can be unproductive. You also begin to redefine what love looks like. You start to understand that love is not a transaction. You do not have to pay for love with your labor, your silence, or your perfection. You deserve to be loved simply because you exist. You start to look for partners who are consistent, who are kind, who take responsibility for themselves. You learn to tolerate the boredom of a healthy relationship, realizing that the lack of chaos is not a lack of passion, but the presence of safety.
You learn to let someone else hold the space for you, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. You learn that intimacy requires letting down the wall of invulnerability you built so long ago. It is important to recognize that you will not be healed overnight. The patterns of survival are etched deep into your nervous system. There will be days when the hypervigilance returns, when you find yourself scanning the room for danger, when you withdraw into your shell of independence. That is okay. Healing is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You will revisit old wounds with new understanding. The goal is not to never feel triggered again. The goal is to know how to hold yourself when you are. The goal is to reduce the lag time between falling into an old pattern and realizing you have the choice to step out of it. You are rewriting your history. You are breaking a generational cycle. The dysfunction that was passed down to you stops with you. By doing this work, by facing the pain instead of running from it, you are ensuring that you do not pass this burden on to the next generation or onto the people you love. You are transforming your suffering into wisdom, not the forced wisdom of a parentified child, but the true, earned wisdom of a healing adult. There is a profound strength in you, but it is not the brittle, defensive strength you had to cultivate as a child. It is soft strength. It is the strength of a tree that can bend in the wind without breaking. It is the strength of water that can flow around obstacles. It is the strength to be open, to be seen, to be human. You are learning that you do not have to be made of stone to be safe. You can be flesh and blood. You can be tender. As you walk this path, remember that you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to disappoint people if it means being true to yourself. The people who truly love you will not leave because you stopped carrying them. They will celebrate that you finally put the load down. And those who only loved you for what you could do for them, let them go. Their absence will make room for the people who love you for who you are. You are retrieving the parts of yourself that you left behind. You are calling back your joy, your spontaneity, your trust. It is a reclamation. You are building a home inside yourself that is safe, a home where you don't have to walk on eggshells, a home where all of your emotions are welcome. You are becoming the person you were meant to be before the world told you who you had to be.
The sadness may never fully disappear. There will always be a tender spot where the loss of your childhood lives, but it will not always be a sharp, bleeding wound. It will become a scar, a testament to what you survived, a map of where you have been. It will remind you of your resilience, but it will no longer dictate your future. You are no longer that helpless child trapped in a chaotic room. You have the power now. You have the agency. You can choose to leave the room. You can choose to close the door. You can choose to walk into the sunlight. So rest now. You have been running a marathon since you were 5 years old. You have been carrying bags that were never yours to hold. Put them down. Breathe. Look at how far you have come. Look at the life you are building, one that is yours, one that is defined by your choices, not your trauma. You are safe now. You are free to grow up, finally, in your own time, in your own way. You are free to be the child you never were, and the adult you always deserved to know. You are enough, just as you are, without doing a single thing. You are enough in your silence. You are enough in your stillness. You are enough. You have spent a lifetime listening to others, attuned to their frequencies, trying to decipher their needs before they even spoke them. Now it is time to listen to yourself. What does your body need right now? Does it need water? Does it need sleep? Does it need to move? Does it need a hug? Listen to the quiet voice that you have suppressed for so long. It is the voice of your intuition, not your anxiety. It is the voice of your true self, guiding you back to center. Trust it. It has been waiting for you. The world told you that being sensitive was a weakness, but you are realizing now that your sensitivity is your superpower. It allows you to experience the world with depth and color. It allows you to connect with others on a profound level.
It allows you to create beauty. The very thing that made you vulnerable as a child is the thing that makes you magnificent as an adult. You do not have to harden your heart to survive anymore. You can keep it open, but with boundaries. You can be a soft creature in a hard world because you know how to protect your own energy. Consider the concept of goodness that was imposed upon you. You were the good child. But good often meant compliant. Good meant silent. Good meant convenient. It is time to rebel against that definition. Sometimes being healthy looks like being bad to the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Sometimes healing looks like being difficult. Sometimes self-love looks like letting someone else be disappointed. You are allowed to be complex. You are allowed to have a shadow side. You are allowed to make mistakes without feeling like the world is going to end. Your worthiness is not fragile. It cannot be broken by a single misstep. Think about the mask you wore. It was a heavy porcelain thing, painted with a permanent smile, a look of calm capability. You wore it so long that your skin grew into it. Taking it off feels like peeling away a part of yourself. It feels naked and exposed. But the air feels different on your true face. It feels fresh. The mask served its purpose. It protected you when you were defenseless. Thank it for its service, and then gently lay it down. You don't need it in the sanctuary you were building. Here you can frown. Here you can cry. Here you can be blank. You don't have to perform for an audience of none. There is a grief, too, for the parents you deserved but didn't get. It is a complicated grief because it often exists alongside love. You can love your parents and still be angry at them. You can understand their trauma and still hold them accountable for yours. You can forgive them and still need distance from them. Nuance is the language of adulthood. As a child, you saw things in black and white. Parents were gods, and if things were wrong, it must be your fault. Now you see the gray. You see them as flawed human beings who were likely acting out of their own unhealed wounds. This doesn't excuse the damage, but it changes the narrative. It wasn't about you. It was never about you. You were just the canvas upon which they painted their own pain. Realizing this sets you free. You can stop taking their limitations personally. And as you let go of the responsibility for their emotions, you might feel a sudden terrifying lightness. It is the feeling of gravity shifting. Without the weight of the world on your back, you might feel unmoored. Who are you if you're not the carrier? This is the void. Do not rush to fill it with new responsibilities. Sit in the void. Let it be. In that space, new things will grow. Creativity will grow. Passion will grow. A sense of self that is rooted in your own desires will grow. You are gardening in the wasteland. It takes time for the flowers to bloom, but the soil is yours now. You are learning the difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation is a wall you build to keep people out because of fear. Solitude is a sanctuary you enter to be with yourself because of love. Isolation feels cold and desperate. Solitude feels rich and restorative. As you heal, you will find yourself seeking solitude not to escape the world, but to recharge so you can engage with it more fully. You will learn to enjoy your own company, not as a survival tactic, because you are actually a delightful person to be with. You are interesting. You are kind. You have thoughts worth thinking. Remember the timeline. There is no deadline for this. You are not behind in life because you spent your 20s or 30s surviving. You were doing the hard work of keeping yourself alive. Now you get to do the work of thriving. Some people bloom early. Some people bloom late. You are blooming now. Do not compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Your journey is unique, and the depth of your struggle has carved out the capacity for deep joy. The valley is deep, but the mountain is high. You have a perspective on life that is rare and valuable. You are breaking the silence. For years, you kept the family secrets. You protected the image. Now you are speaking your truth. Maybe only to yourself, maybe to a therapist, maybe to a friend. But every time you speak the truth of what happened, you chip away at the shame. Shame cannot survive in the light. It needs secrecy to grow. By owning your story, you take the power back. You are no longer the victim of your history. You are the narrator of it. You get to decide what it means. You get to decide the ending. So, let this be a permission slip. Permission to be messy. Permission to be unproductive. Permission to change your mind. Permission to not know the answer. Permission to be weak. Permission to need. Permission to take up space. Permission to exist without apology. You have earned this freedom. You paid for it with your childhood. Now, claim it. The cage door is open. It has been open for a long time. It is time to walk out. The world is waiting for you, not the version of you that fixes everything, but the version of you that simply is. And that version is beautiful. That version is whole. That version is free.